Good Saturday morning to one and all, and it's time for us to start the Experts program here on Power Talk Radio, 1460 and 101 FM. Mark Carbonaro with you, and Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, joining us right now as we kick off the Experts program this morning. Good morning, Luis.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
Doing pretty well. So we had some rain overnight, but it looks like it's going to be a partly cloudy day today. Maybe some rain again, scattered showers this afternoon. But it's a day to stay inside and get some things done, I think.
Yeah, it is. But it's also Pigs and Pinot night over at the Salinas Airport.
That's right.
Our Salinas Rotary Club is doing their big fundraiser this year. Starts at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
I'm sure there's still tickets available if you're interested. And we've done it at the Armory over in Salinas and also at the Taylor Building. But this year we're doing it out at the Salinas Airport at one of the hangars.
Sure.
And in a way, it's a tribute to the air show, which is moving to March this year from their traditional October timeframe because of, I think, the Blue Angels they wanted to get. But
that's right.
Yeah, we'll be going out and heading to that.
Sounds great. Sounds like it's going to be a good time. Now, is the beneficiary still going to be the Armory, or not the Armory, but the PAL program?
We'll support PAL. It's not we don't give 100% of the proceeds to any one group. We generate enough funding from that event to really benefit a number of community groups, including PAL.
Okay.
So we do our best to kind of spread the love. But if you're not doing anything tonight, check it out. You can go online or to the Salinas Rotary's Facebook page to get more information.
All right. How much are the tickets?
That is a good question. I think they're $85.
Okay.
But don't hold me to that.
All right. All you can eat and drink, and it's all for a good cause.
Yeah, we have 30 wineries and I think almost 30 restaurants and chefs that will be there, showering the attendees with great food and great wine. And even though it's called Pigs and Pinot, there will be something other than pork and Pinot available. So.
Sounds good. All right. Well, let's talk. Yes, we have some. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, no. So, really exciting news. I mean, I think we're both excited about it because, we grew up in an era where space exploration was kind of an everyday thing.
Yes.
Apollo was launching, and then we had the shuttles and all sorts. The space station. It just seems like after the shuttle was retired, which was 8 years ago. Can you think about that? I mean, it's been 8 years since the United States has had the capability of putting an astronaut into space, and we've been relying on the Russians to launch our folks up to the space station and do crew changes and supply missions. But
right.
that's rapidly changing as all these private companies like Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and SpaceX are taking on the challenge to get us back into space and send people back into space.
Right.
And last night was a really important event because SpaceX launched their manned capsule, although the capsule did not have any human beings on there. They had a dummy called Tripoli representing a person. But the capsule was launched and looks like it's going to be successfully docking with the space station later. And if that happens, then the first manned flight is scheduled for July of this year, and that's going to be super exciting.
Wow. And this will be the first time a private space company is able to launch someone into outer space.
Exactly. And what many people don't know is that SpaceX has had a contract with NASA to do resupply missions. They've been launching cargo rockets pretty regularly over the last few years, but the goal was to eventually get to the point where we can start using our own technology and our own American companies to launch American astronauts back into space. And SpaceX is only the first. Blue Origin, which is Jeff Bezos of Amazon fame, that's his company. They're getting close to being able to do the same thing pretty quickly here. They're expecting that by August they'll be able to test the same kind of capability. And then Virgin Galactic, which is Richard Branson's company, is focused completely on tourism. They're not interested in getting launching any satellites or astronauts into space. They just want to be able to take people into space. And they actually had their first test of that with a passenger back in December. successfully putting somebody over 50 miles above the Earth. So technically, that person is now considered an astronaut.
Wow. So is this a situation where NASA is completely out of the manned space business, or are they ever going to get back into it?
Well, they're going to get back into it, but basically buying rides from other people. That is, rather than developing their own proprietary technology like they did with the Apollo and the Gemini missions and even the shuttles, they're leaving private industry to develop the technology and make all the mistakes and invest all the money. Although NASA is, the government through NASA is supporting a lot of this by providing funding, grant funding, and things like that. But the idea there is like, hey, let's let private industry do what they do best, which is develop a less expensive, better way of doing things. And then when they perfected it, just like we do with many other contractors the government uses, we'll just pay for access, have them ship our guys into space or ship our cargo into space. And then private companies are very anxious because they think that space is literally the next frontier.
Right. And
they want to be able to start exploiting some of the near-Earth asteroids, for example. They're talking about mining for things off of asteroids or going to the moon. We all have heard Elon Musk's passion about going to Mars and where he thinks we need to be. And even recently, Jeff Bezos was talking about a future where, billions of people would live in space, would live in colonies outside of Earth. And that's where they see the future. And they're not doing it for altruistic reasons. They're doing it because they want to make money. Sure,
because they figure there could be materials out there, like on these asteroids that you would mine, that would be used in high-tech applications.
Exactly. And as it gets more and more difficult to do things on Earth, manufacturing, one of the challenges that they have is that there's a lot of production of very toxic products when you manufacture certain things. Imagine being able to put factories into space or on the moon and not really care about the fact that you're creating all this toxic waste because you're not doing any damage to that environment. And you can see a future. I think long after you and I are gone, I would say, but a future where manufacturing, it does go from, the surface of the Earth to space, or at least the most toxic of things.
Right. So where are the astronauts coming? Where are the pilots for these vehicles coming from? Are they coming out of the U.S. Air Force, NASA, or are they being developed also by the private companies that are developing the rockets?
Both. The private companies have their own training programs that they basically are going to be training the folks that are going to drive the government astronauts up into space, with the idea being, NASA is going to still need scientists, and they're going to need astronauts that they can send to the International Space Station or maybe later to the moon, but they don't necessarily have to be the pilots that take the rockets and the spaceships there. That can be done by private contractors who are hiring their own pilots and training them.
Okay, interesting. And as far as, because this would seem to be kind of something that's already happened. If you look at merchant shipping or the airline industry, a vast majority of the pilots and the captains, the mariners of ships, they came out of the United States Navy or they come out of the Air Force, as the case may be with airlines. It's turned out to be a pretty fertile training ground.
Yeah, and in fact, if you look at a lot of the pilots that are flying commercial aircraft today, they're still reservists largely, still getting their thrills flying fighter jets and bombers, and their day job is to fly us from point A to point B.
Right.
But that's a really good example. I mean, I think you think in terms of transportation for U.S. Military forces, the bulk of them get transported on commercial aircraft.
Okay.
They're not transported on Air Force planes unless they're going into combat or they're doing some sort of training. If you're going to take a bunch of troops from here to Japan to do a troop rotation, they're going to be flying commercial or charter flights. They're not going to be flying, a military flight.
All right. Hey, let's talk a little bit also about Jeff Bezos' plan, his Blue Origin taking on SpaceX. So now we're going to see competition between these private companies that want to go into outer space. Bezos has developed a new Shepard rocket but it's kind of a preliminary rocket to something much larger he wants to build called the New Glenn. What do you know about these?
Yeah, so the Shepard rocket is a smaller test rocket. What's cool about Jeff Bezos' concept is that he wants his rockets not only to fire off and go into space, but he wants them to be able to land tail first after they've discharged their cargo, in orbit. And he's demonstrated that time and time again, and he's perfected it. And the reason is because it brings down the cost of these launches, because you can reuse one of these vehicles after refurbishing it for after a couple of weeks. It can turn around right away and fire off another cargo. But the rockets that he's currently using, the Shepards, are fairly small, and really they can only send small packages into orbit. Where he's really seeing the future is in something he calls the New Glenn, which is this massive rocket designed to launch, really heavy cargo, including human beings, into space. And he's trying to compete with SpaceX Falcon Heavy, which is their version of the New Glenn for these large, heavy cargo loads. And like we were talking earlier, there's going to be a lot of opportunity once the cost of getting into space comes down into what people would consider reasonable, instead of the millions of dollars, the hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's going to make space more approachable for a lot of entrepreneurs that have a lot of ideas of not just satellites, but how to use space as a platform for doing all sorts of things.
All right. Well, Louis, before we go here, I'm just going to share with you a little audio of, private space travel today is serious business, but there was a time when the very idea of private astronauts and private space travel was a laughing matter. Check this out.
You're in Hollywood, California.
Boy, there's a stroke of luck. I blacked out over Honolulu.
What, were you flying over Honolulu?
No, it's in orbit. I'm an astronaut.
Well, have you ever done that before? Blacked out, I mean?
Yeah, I blacked out once back home in the Tunnel of Love.
See, that must have been embarrassing.
No, I was alone. I was doing a test run.
Well, here you are in Hollywood, California.
Yeah, boy, ain't that weird? Well, you're sure this ain't the moon? They're holding me responsible for that rocket. You ain't seen it, have you?
No, I haven't seen it.
So a couple guys named Hudson and Landry doing a bit called the Astronut. And I sent you a link to that if you want to check it out. It's a very funny little bit about a private astronaut. And
I will have to check it out.
And of course, Bezos has his Glenn and his new Shepard.
Yep.
And their rocket was the Imogene 1. So there.
Very cute.
Yes. All right. Luis Alvarez, CEO of the Alvarez Technology Group, has been our guest today. Reach him online at alvareztg.com. At AlvarezTG is the Twitter handle. Luis, the toll-free number for the I-Team.
Give us a call at 866-78-ITEAM. That's 866-784-8326.